This is Lips LA.
Hey guys, it's Scott Lips, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Lip Service. On today's show, you're going to hear a great conversation I had with Brandon Boyd and Michael Einziger from Incubus. The guys just released a new EP, Trust Fall Side B. The band has been around for almost 30 years. Actually, next year will mark the 30th year anniversary. This is a great record they just released. Very exciting interview, actually. It's the first time I've ever had band members interview each other. So Brandon is actually interviewing Michael and vice versa. We're going to actually get to some fan questions. We got to some fan questions. Great guys, great album. Really excited. It was a great interview. I think you'll really enjoy it. So coming up in just a moment, the boys in Incubus, Brandon Boyd and Michael Einziger. Hey guys, well, welcome to the show. I'm very excited about today. We have the boys in Incubus. Brandon, as you know, you've been on the show quite a few times, but I'm really excited to have you guys interview each other today and talk about the new record. It's almost 30 years of you guys being together, which is incredible. I definitely want to talk about the new album, how you guys came to write it, obviously life in quarantine. The new EP is actually called Trust Fall Side B. Side A came out about 5 years ago. So Mikey and Brandon, I'd love you guys to take it away and get into it, and I'll interject here and there to play a couple tracks from the album. But
Cool.
More or less, this is like the old interview magazine style show where you guys will actually interview each other about what's going on, your life in quarantine, and the album. Take it away, guys.
Nice. What's up, Mike?
Hi, Brandon. How are you?
Where are you?
I'm in Indiana Jones's cavern
Temple of Doom?
Temple of Doom. As you can see from the secret. Wait, where is it? The stone.
Oh, right.
The stone.
So if I come to your house with a whip and like a revolver, I should go towards that. That's the thing I'd want to steal.
That's the thing you'd want to steal, and that's the thing that if you removed it,
Yeah.
everything would start, like the ceiling would start falling and all that.
A giant
That's-
boulder.
that's what
that chased me
happens
down
when
a
you-
corridor.
Yeah, that's what happens when you take the one thing that
Nice.
is the most desired thing in the room. Anyway, where are you? You're outside on a deck in a wildlife preserve.
Right.
Sorry.
No, I'm actually in my toilet, but this is one of those cool Zoom backgrounds.
Ah, I see.
They're starting to look very realistic.
Sweet. Fantastic.
Uh,
It's very relaxing where you are right now.
You know, I got to say, it is pretty relaxing. I feel incredibly lucky to be where I am during this whole situation. And I know that you're in good hands, so to speak, as well. I have so many friends that live in New York and people in Chicago and people who, live in apartments in big cities where most of the time they live there. And sometimes they've chosen to live in those places because the city is like their home. And they get to walk around and experience it like that. It's so, just couldn't be more different right now. It's such a strange time. But I'm stoked that we're able to still make music. We can't perform live music for people at this moment, but we will get there. I'm hoping that sooner than later, we're going to be able to get into the band room and maybe start live streaming. I think people would enjoy that.
Yep.
That'll be fun.
Yep.
I have a question for you. I wrote down some questions. I tried to be pro.
Nice.
You want to see pro Brandon real quick?
Yes.
So Mike, we just did that acoustic version of Agoraphobia. And so boys and girls, Michael and I recorded via sort of MP3 file. Michael did an acoustic version of Agoraphobia, and then I sang the vocal at my house. And I'm going to make that available to you guys soon, hopefully sooner than later. But it made me think about how ambitious and adventurous the musicianship was on that album, A Crow Left to the Murder, which came out in 2003. And I started thinking about the consequences of how ambitious the musicianship was, to the point where you had to have surgery on your arm. And I was thinking about it because I don't think anybody really knows this, but I had my septum corrected in December, right when we came home from tour, 4 days after we came home from the Make Yourself tour. I went in and they put me to sleep, and they re-broke my nose and fixed my septum, which had been really damaged from breaking my nose as a kid. And this whole time while I've been recovering, I've been thinking about you and recovering with your wrist and stuff like that. And I guess I was wondering how it has affected your process over the years of like writing and performing every night and things like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it definitely threw a wrench into my, this was like back in 2000, I think 6 or 7, sometime around then. So it's quite a while ago now, 13, 14 years ago, that I got carpal tunnel, for those who don't know. And that's an injury to my left wrist, which is like, the hand that I use for fretting notes. And yeah, well, there's it wasn't so clear to me then, but there's a very clear progression of how it happened, which was basically that in the early days, I didn't have when we first started touring, when we first started playing shows, like kind of for real playing shows, I didn't even have a backup guitar. And so, or if I did break a string, like I didn't have like a guitar tech or anybody like that to like help me. So if I broke a string during a show, like everything kind of either had to stop or I had to like replace the string while the show was happening. And I didn't want that to happen. So I started playing heavier and heavier and heavier gauge strings until I stopped breaking them.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that. Of course.
So at one point I was playing like these really, really heavy gauge strings. And they felt really good too. Like
they sounded awesome.
For playing heavier music, it was really cool because like it just felt like, almost felt like I was playing a bass. My strings were so thick, but like they didn't break, and that was done sort of by necessity. And then at that point, when I got used to that, playing anybody else's guitar that had like normal size strings felt like I was playing a toy. It like felt like rubber bands to me. So I got used to that. I didn't realize how badly I was like damaging my wrist. And then over years, I just got used to playing those heavy strings and I kept playing them. So over time, when I did get, endorsements and that type of thing, and, as many guitars as I wanted or whatever, and I had techs like setting my equipment up and tuning my guitars and all that, I still kept playing those heavy strings. And then over time, it damaged, my wrist, and it caught up with me around 2006 or 7 or whenever that was. Yeah. So by that point, I got to a point, I remember we were in Europe and I was like, I literally can't even press down on a fret anymore. Like
I remember that show in Germany that we played. We were like 3/4 of the way through a concert in front of like 6,000 people. And I looked over at you and I remember it was really gnarly. You were like hugging the neck of your guitar, trying to make a chord. And I was like, something.
Yeah, it sucked. It was awful. And I
felt for you, man.
And it's like, anytime I would press down on the strings, like it would send a shock through my wrist, the way that like the same way you do, like when you hit your funny bone, like on your elbow, and it's like, that's how it felt to like press down. And it was awful. Crazy. So anyway, I ruined my wrist at that time. But it also ended up being like a very productive time for me when I couldn't play. I had to recover, I should have taken a lot longer to recover than we did, but we were kind of like right in the middle of a lot of Incubus related stuff. And everyone was like really itching to get back out. And there was a lot of pressure coming from managers and record labels and stuff like that at the time. So I definitely started playing and touring again way too early, but I did, take some time to recover, a few months. And during that time, is when I started playing piano more. During that time, I started learning more about music, and it was an interesting time where I just sort of widened what I was doing and changed it a bit. And it was quite fun because it sort of took a negative situation and turned it into something positive.
And that's actually a really good point. There's always going to be, I guess, for lack of a better term, like collateral damage around things that we do. But in this sense, like this is something that we love to do and that we pursue and pursued as a kind of a life. We pursued music as a life. And there are so many things that are, in retrospect, they're like kind of small things, but over the long haul, they end up becoming these things, like these little, like, they knock us in different directions, unforeseen circumstances will knock us off into certain directions. And I think that one of the things we can take away from it, and this quarantine situation, this coronavirus situation, is one of those situations where it is a big deal, but I think that there are some potentially positive things that can result of it, in everybody individually focusing on the things that we individually can control, because it's this huge thing happening that is seemingly out of our control, and everyone's kind of panicking about it, like, what are we going to do, and when's things going to return to normal, blah blah blah. But it's a good lesson in, like, slowing down a little bit and just saying, okay, what can I myself control here? So like in your situation, you're like, can't play guitar, I'm going to study music a little bit, and it did, like, some really interesting fruit was born out of that period of time for our band, at least
Yeah.
I remember it as such. I remember it being hard because we were worried about you and everything, but
Yeah. Well, and over time, at least as far as like my wrist is concerned, it's like, it pretty much went back to normal after. It just took probably a year or two. It got to the point, relatively quickly, where it just wasn't really, like, stopped really figuring into, like, my process, and like, I just sort of, like, forgot about it at a certain point. So,
well, long story short, the version of agoraphobia that sparked this part of the conversation sounds really cool. I'm really stoked that we did it, and it seems like a weirdly appropriate song right now.
Yeah, I was listening to it right before we did it. I remember texting you and being like, saying like, the lyrics to this song are, like, frighteningly relevant right now. Listening to it and being like, wow, this is what a crazy time this is right now. And I'm hopeful that things will return to, I mean, normal is a relative term. I don't think it'll ever go back to the way that it was, because how can it, like, we're gonna carry this experience with us moving forward, and everything, not everything, but lots of things, I think, will just be seen differently.
Pandemics have a tendency to shift global directionality. I was reading about the 1918 Spanish flu, and it was, orders of magnitude worse than this. Granted, we didn't have a lot of the same technologies and information that we had today back then, so of course it was going to be worse, but this will undoubtedly shift the way that Earthlings operate. I think that another interesting takeaway might be personal hygiene and personal responsibility, which I'm actually really happy about. When we travel as a band, we go all over the world to play concerts, and I'm very much hoping that the world returns to some semblance of normal, in the sense that we are still able to do that. But something that I've always noticed, especially when we go through Asia and like Southeast Asia, and through airports and out in public, like, half the people you see were wearing masks. This was like for as long as we've been traveling. And it's a little bit shocking at first, because you're like, why is everybody covering their faces? But it just, culturally, there isn't as much of a stigma attached to wearing a mask. Like here in America or in Europe, like 5 years ago, if you saw somebody wearing a mask at a party, you'd be like, what's wrong with the homeboy? He's been watching those Michael Jackson videos, like, what's going on? But now I think it's actually a really good thing that the stigma has been officially broken here. So if you're not feeling good, even when we're past this, like, just mask up, maybe don't go out.
Yeah, my first experience going to the store and really, like, putting on a mask and wearing gloves, like, I and at the time that the first time I did that was early, like between the first and second week of March. My wife, Anne Marie, was like she was very conservative about this whole thing, and kind of foresaw a lot of it before I did.
Yeah.
And she was like very insistent. Like, when you go to the store, you need to wear a mask and gloves, and people weren't doing that yet. And
She has a background in chemistry and biology, right? So she has
yeah,
an
and
understanding of how microbes work.
she knew
Germs.
she was really closely tracking what had been going on in China, like all the
Yeah.
way back in like December and January. She was talking about it, and so I put on a mask and put on gloves and went to the store, and I felt really self-conscious about it because no one else was wearing it.
Yeah.
And like, that was only it was a month ago, like, and the
Yeah.
whole world is different now. The whole, the everyone has to wear those things now. You have to wear gloves, but you have to wear a mask.
Unless
And
you're the vice president.
I
We talked
I
about
don't
this
even
yesterday.
I don't even have word like the guy gets up there and says, well, I know I don't have it. It's like, well, you knew that you didn't have it at the exact moment that you took that test, but you don't know that you didn't have it 5 minutes later,
Yeah, exactly.
and that's the scariest thing about this whole ordeal is that, the deadliest diseases like Ebola, for example, like the symptoms are so extreme that it's really easy to tell who has these diseases. And when you can tell who has them, they're much easier to contain. But this one, a lot of people are not even symptomatic, or their symptoms are very hard to tell or hard to see. So hard to know that the people who have it don't even know that they have it necessarily. So
Right.
those are the diseases that spread, like really spread, and that's what's been happening with this. And the stupidity, like, of certain governmental leadership is like astonishing to me. Like, it's just like,
it's almost a virus in and of itself. Is stupidity
it's a
contagious?
pandemic of its own. It really is
Lord.
just fucking insane. Like,
It's, I don't know why I'm laughing. I think that's my only like response when there are things that are so beyond comprehension. I start to chuckle a little bit because, we've been saying this forever. As long as, we've been paying attention to human behavior, it's like that's truly the most anomalous, unpredictable thing is human behavior. Like, this whole situation was, it was not only predictable, it was predicted. People
well in advance.
Yeah, we've known that this was highly possible. We've known, how to prevent transmission of, obviously this is it's a novel virus, and it's going to behave a little bit differently, but for the most part, yeah. Anyway, let's talk about music.
I was going to say, guys, your new record, by the way, sorry to interject, but it's fantastic. And
Thanks, Scott.
the first single you guys released is called Into the Summer. How appropriate, because I feel like we may not even have a proper summer now. I don't even know what summer is going to be at this point, but I'd love to jump to that song.
Into the summer.
Yeah, right. I'd love to just talk about for a moment how you guys wrote that song. We'll play the song and we'll be back with you guys interviewing each other. So how did you guys come up with that song, by the way?
So the sort of main pieces of the song of Into the Summer came together quite a long time ago, while we were writing songs for Trust Fall Side A. And it was like a sort of just an idea that we were kicking around a little bit. And back at that time, we kind of like put together a bunch of different musical ideas, but didn't really turn all of them into songs. Like, we only turned a few of them into songs. And that was one that I think we always liked, but just sort of didn't really know what to do with. Or it's not that we didn't know what to do with it. Just there were other songs that I think were more captivating to us, or more pieces of music, at least for me, that kind of came together. Anytime we write a song, there's an element of there's an organic way that it comes together. There's like a flow that we achieve. And if it's too burdensome, it just doesn't come together. And so I think that, like, with that one, at that time, it just didn't come together in the way that maybe some of the others did. But then later on, more recently, when we started kind of like, playing musical telephone the way that we do when we start working on songs, that one kind of came back into our into our point of view and just became a song, you know. And it was interesting because it's such a weird piece of music, and it was fun to it was really fun to hear lyrics and melodies starting to like kind of weave their way into this thing that had existed for such a long time and become something totally new and different.
Well, I
That's
think
what
it
I was
takes on a
gonna.
whole new meaning with what's going
Yeah.
on now. But we'll be back in just a moment. We have a ton of fan questions for you guys. I'm sure you guys saw there was an overwhelming amount of responses to this new record and just the process. So we'll be back in just a moment and talk about the new record a bit more with Michael and Brandon.
This is Lips LA.
And we're back. So guys,
Hi.
let's get into the new record and just, I guess we can talk about some more tracks on the record. My favorite track on the record is Karma Come Back. I've been playing that a constant repeat in my car.
Nice.
I guess if you guys want to just talk about the process and maybe answer some of the questions that the fans were so eager to ask about the record, the process, you know, your life in quarantine, we'll get to that obviously. And how is this going to affect the way as a band that you know, get together, how you perform, how you market the record? There's so much uncertainty in the future. It'd be great to know like your thoughts on moving forward with the band and the record.
Yeah. Thank you, by the way, for listening to the record, Scott, and thank you everyone listening for listening to the record. And we are an independent band again after quite a long time. We started our career as an independent band. We put out a record called Fungus Among Us. I think we printed like 1,000 copies, and we sold 1,000 copies after doing a bunch of little, you know, bar gigs and stuff like that. But we spent the majority of our career signed to major record labels, which was very fruitful for us, and it was very educational as well. But we came into this new period of our career questioning whether or not being signed to a major label was going to be the right thing for us, and we concluded that we were going to give it a go independently. So it's been really fun so far. So, but we also don't have those limitless resources that record labels have, those seemingly limitless resources record labels have. So if you guys like it, share it. Say, hey, have you heard this new Incubus stuff? It's good. Check it out, man. Check it out, dude, bro. It's cool. But what was the question? Karma Come Back.
Yeah, we're just talking about the process of the record. And by the way, congratulations, because the record about 2 weeks ago was #1 on the rock charts on iTunes, which is an incredible feat with what's going on now in music. So kudos to you guys for having the #1 record on the rock charts. So
thanks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, with that in particular, that song, Karma Come Back, it started with, as many of our songs start, but it was much heavier, like all the way through. It was more kind of, I suppose, a traditional Incubus rock song. And a lot of the melodies that you hear emerged around that. And then we tried on a bunch of different, you know, outfits for the song, so to speak. And, you know, we like to kind of run the spectrum as far as ways a song can be presented when we're in the band room together. So with this song, we landed on starting it with a little bit more of like we slowed it down, we scaled it back, and we made it a little bit more kind of like ominous sounding, like it was creeping up on you, and kept the melody, and something kind of interesting happened. I don't know, can you speak to that at all, Mike?
I mean, the thing that I can say about it is that it, you know, that like I said earlier, there's like this state of flow that we kind of get into when something's working, and that was one of those songs that just came together in that way. Like everything fit together, and it was one of those, you know, we've written many songs like this, and I guess, you know, when did we write that song? When was that put together? Was that 2019?
I think it was in 2019. It was before we went on the 20 years of Make Yourself tour.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we've written so many songs at this point and recorded so many songs that sometimes it's difficult to keep track of like when they happen, because now more than ever, you know, we used to like record albums and it was always done in like a very focused, concerted period of time, where like Morning View, for example, was written and recorded during a period of about 4 months. The entire record was conceived of, written, and recorded during that period of time. Make Yourself was similar, and so was Crow. And it was like during, and music was consumed that way as well. It was like, it wasn't just, it was a two-way street as far as that was concerned. But now, in today's world, it's sort of a rolling basis. Like, music is coming out constantly, and it's not, and we don't make music the same way that we used to. I think the world has just changed a lot. Like, we could do it that way, but it's harder and harder. It becomes harder and harder to do it that way. But in today's world, like, we're constantly kind of writing and then just releasing things as they, even with the Trust Fall side B, like, we released Into the Summer before a lot of the other songs were even finished, so it's like
before they were finished.
Exactly. So it's like these songs, like, we're finishing some, we're starting others, we're recording some while we're writing others. Like, it all, the process just kind of endlessly sort of bleeds into whatever came before it and whatever comes after it. So it's very amorphous now. It's not like so well defined. And so that song Karma Come Back was like amidst sort of a period of where things were just sort of fitting together. And I just remember, once we kind of had the pieces of that song together, it kind of felt like, oh, like, there are going to be others too, like sometimes we write songs in isolation where it's like just a song. Like, Into the Summer sort of felt like that, actually. Like, that song was kind of its own project, but and I don't know if what I'm saying right now makes any sense at all, but Karma Come Back was like part of a small group of songs that we were trying to write and record and finish while we were on the road. Along with On Without You, that was
On Without Me happened. We recorded that song. We were writing that song while we were on the 20 Years of Make Yourself tour. Every sound check, we would show up a little bit early and just get on stage and chip away at that track. And then I was like fine tuning the lyrics, but I had a really good sense of what the melodies wanted to be in that song. And then speaking to that flow state that Michael was referring to, and as it pertains to our songwriting, I've learned over the years that I can, myself, I can be either a participant and a co-conspirator in that flow process, or I can also end up being unwittingly like a barrier to it, in that I will, with all of my best intentions, show up as a singer and a lyricist, and like what's happening, for instance, with Into the Summer, when we first started writing it in like 2014, some of the music for like what became the verses and kind of that lead guitar riff, and I really liked it, but I couldn't get into that flow thing with it. And so we ended up agreeing like, this is a cool idea, but we like shelved it for a period of time, and we almost kind of forgot about it. And then it came up, I was looking for something else in my treasure trove of band demos, MP3s that I have, and it popped back up, and I pushed play, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember this one. And all it took was to hear it with fresh ears like 4 or 5 years later. And all of a sudden, all these melodies and all this whole lyric just came spilling out. And Mikey, I think I asked you to change like one note in the chorus, and then all of a sudden the song just like I was able to show up in the flow with the guys. And so it's songwriting, and it's such a kind of, Michael was saying, it's a very nebulous process. It's a very, it's like swimming in some, non-linear soup. You're just kind of swimming around, and you're pulling imagery, and you're pulling sounds and things all together, and then mushing them together, and then showing each other like, what about this soup? Do you like this soup? And sometimes it's like amazing. Cooking, yeah, it's like cooking. Exactly.
In terms of this record, in terms of where the future of the business is going, I mean, I feel like and a bunch of the people that wrote in had written things like, how do you see the music industry and your band evolving over the next couple of years with everything going on? So obviously we're in a very undetermined time of what's happening in culture. I think talking about live music, maybe fall 2021 at this point. You know, a lot of bands are taking to things like Instagram, and, you know, they're doing, live concerts. The Post Malone thing from his house is actually fairly cool. And everyone's sort of evolving and changing. So what do you think in terms of you guys and yourself and Mikey, in terms of like, where do you see the band evolving over the next couple of years with everything going on? That's actually one of the fan questions too, which I really liked.
The short answer is we don't really know, because we don't know. The landscape is still sort of unfolding before us. And I think it would be premature to hang our hat definitively on any one methodology. You know what I mean? I think that it makes sense for us to remain once again, in a kind of, in a liminal state, in a kind of in-between state, but be very ready as musicians and as artists to adapt. And I think that's something that we're actually good at as a band. We have a preferred methodology, which people have been observing and hopefully enjoying over the past almost 30 years. And that methodology is we write music and we record it and we put it out, and then we go on tour and we show up and we sing and play our hearts out, and people show up and they sing their hearts out with us and they dance ecstatically. And that's an amazing thing. That's something to me that could never really get old. He's back. But as far as the current situation, you're right. I don't see any concerts happening in the short term, live concerts. It seems like the last place that anybody in their right mind would go, which sucks, but that's just the reality that we're faced with today, taking care of ourselves and our immediate families around us, doing little things that we can to try and be of service to our community. For instance, we just did this campaign with the launch of Trust Fall Side B last week, and we were able to raise a big old pile of cash for a charity called No Kid Hungry, which it basically buys meals for underserved kids in areas where these kids, their main source of food was like public school. You know, a lot of kids are finding all of their meals, sometimes 3 meals a day, at school. And so, you know, we're doing what we can as a creative outfit to be of service like that as well. But as far as playing and writing music and stuff like that, what we're focusing on right now is maybe breaking our very tight quarantine that we've had, and in the coming weeks, like actually getting together in the band room and writing and maybe live streaming from the band room and doing some concerts from there. I personally would love to do that. I think the guys and everybody in the band would also love to do that, if only just to like get our fucking wiggles out a little bit. Like, we've all been cooped up at home for so long. I think it would be really enjoyable for people who enjoy our band to see us in a room together doing the thing. So that's in the immediate. The long term, we're just going to try and be as adaptable as we know how to be. And, fortunately, this is the stuff that human beings are the best at. Like, what's the old saying? Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
This is how good things happen. Good things emerge out of bad circumstances. We just need to have a frame of mind that allows us to look for the good things. So
let's talk about some of the fan questions and get into it. There's some great questions there.
All right,
cool.
Brandon Boyd,
see,
what's one thing that you are doing to relieve stress during quarantine? This question was asked by Casey Simmons.
Besides furiously masturbating multiple times a day. I was trying to get you to spit your coffee out.
All right, you succeeded. Let's just assume you succeeded.
I have been, Michael, maybe you'll be warmed to hear this. I've really been like I don't know any other way to put it. I've been like bonding with my guitar. I have a late 50s Gibson Parlor acoustic. You know, that one that I've had for years?
Mm-hmm.
Been like bonding with it. I sit down with it every day for like hours and learning lots of people's songs that I've always liked and really figuring out how many songs are written with the same like 4 and 5 chords. It's pretty incredible, actually. And so I've been learning some of these songs well enough that I've done like little crappy recordings of them at my house. I'll send you a couple today. I've been having a lot of fun with it.
Hey, there's always a new way to discover music. That's the great thing about it, is that it's endless and you can literally do that for the rest of your life.
It's so much fun. It actually, and I've always known this too. It's one of the reasons why I'm continually fascinated by music, both listening to it, but also attempting to make it, is that it feels like it's tickling your brain and your spirit at the same time. Like there's something in my brain that's like, yes, do this.
Now your turn.
What about you? You were telling me the other day that you were like, I was going to say, what are you doing to relieve the stress of quarantine? You were talking about like perfecting a pad thai recipe the other day.
Yeah. So as part of the sort of stocking up on food and we try not to go to the store ever if we don't have to. And Anne-Marie, my wife, she accidentally ordered like a case of like 12 packages of pad thai noodles. So we were like, all right, well, we have to eat these now because we ordered all these noodles. And I think I'm on like the 7th or 8th time I've made it now.
Yeah. Awesome.
And number one, I love pad thai. And I've gotten really good at making it. And
I want to taste it.
And it's like, and you'll appreciate this, Brandon. Actually, there's a meal that we eat a lot while we're on tour. It's just like greens, like, either kale or spinach, sauteed with like, olive oil, maybe a little bit of garlic, some brown rice, and maybe some ground turkey or some type of protein.
Yeah.
And so I just like, I always love eating that also. So I've figured out how to recreate that exactly the way that we do it on tour.
Making me hungry.
Yeah. Like it's really good. Like I'll eat that meal every day,
I'll eat that every day too. That sounds so delicious.
I kept seeing your like I would see it being, brought to you every day and I would be like, I want to eat that.
Right. It's good, right? It's just so simple. It's just like simple, fancy caveman food.
Yeah, I know how to make it now exactly like to the T, exactly the way that we eat it on the road. So, hey,
that's awesome.
I can whip it up for us while we're on the road next time.
That would be rad. Okay, I got a question. Someone's asking, tell us about the process of recording the song Paper Cuts together. That's from Mary Acosta 87. Hi, Mary Acosta.
So, Brandon, you and I were spending time in this little house in Venice that was like in the middle of the street. It's like, I remember I always used to think of the song Our House in the middle of our street because it was a house literally in the middle of the street. Like it was on like a little island in the middle of the street. And it was this weird sort of funky house when do you think that house was built?
It was one of the early Venice bungalows, they call them. So it probably would have been sometime between the 20s and the 40s. The house was so old, it was like crooked. The floors were crooked. The walls were sideways. It was just dripping with personality and probably lots of mold too, but continue.
It was built like in sections. And so like each section was like a different level than the other. But there was this little old beat up, like upright piano, against one of the walls. And we would go in there and write music. And a lot of times, I'd bring an acoustic guitar or whatever, but then I had written this, just set of chords on the piano, and we decided to record. We do this all the time when we're writing. We make little voice notes with our cell phones, with our iPhones, and in this particular case with Paper Cuts, that recording is actually in that rickety old house with that crappy little piano. it just sounded good and it had like a cool, set of characteristics. And, I believe that, and Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, that was you just, recording your ideas on top of the piano that we recorded that day. And,
Yeah.
It ended up being really cool. And, we decided to release it because it was like something that we didn't necessarily think sometimes we would take that and then turn it into an Incubus song in the more traditional sense, like
Scale it up.
Yeah, like bass drums and keyboards and, make a bigger production out of it. But that just seemed like it didn't really need anything else.
Right.
And we've written several songs like that in the past. And those are some of my favorites, actually. Like they're the most intimate, they're the most personal. So I love that we put that song out, and I love that you connected with it the way that you did.
On that note, which are your favorite Incubus songs?
Our favorite Incubus songs? Ooh.
Yeah, I mean that's another fan
Scott,
question.
I'm sure you can attest to this. Scott, I'm sure you can attest to this when people would ask you like what your favorite stuff of your own work is, and if you ask most artists, it's usually what they just wrote or what they're writing currently. So my answer to that question today is a song that's actually on the EP. It's called On Without Me. It was the last track that we wrote for this record, and I was talking about it a little bit earlier, but we wrote it while we were on tour this past fall for the 20 Years of Make Yourself tour. We would just show up every day at soundcheck, and we would plug in and we would chip away at the song. And it gave me an unusual opportunity to hear the song at volume every day for like 2 months before I truly made up my mind about what I wanted to do with it lyrically and melodically. So I had a pretty strong idea of what I wanted to do melodically with it, but then the lyrics and little bits of the melody were being honed over the course of a couple of months. So we came home and laid that track down, and it was the last one we recorded, and that one's my favorite for today.
Awesome. Mikey, what's your favorite Incubus songs?
This is the hardest question. And that's the most stereotypical answer that I think a musician or any artist would give. Oh, it's such a hard question. But I'm actually going to say that, like, I agree with what Brandon said, but I've also kind of, in a certain way, from a certain perspective, had a bit of a change of heart in terms of like whatever we're doing now being like the favorite thing. Like if you would have asked me this question 10 years ago, I would have said that exactly. But I think the older that I get and the more distance and time that comes between like the earlier albums and recordings that we made as a band, and also just the history of the band as we get further and further into our career and further and further into aging, I become, I think, more, number one, just more appreciative, and also like continually astonished at what we were able to write and record and how we were able to connect with people, because it's really hard to do that. There's so much noise in the world. There's just so much of everything, good things, bad things, whatever, blah, blah, blah things. Like there's just so much of everything. And to like actually find your own little space in there to connect with people is like a rare, beautiful thing. And so I think that the question of what my favorite Incubus song, it's like it now kind of becomes more intertwined with, instead of just being like my like opinion about that, like I'm also thinking about what it means to like what music means to the people who listen to it. Like that figures into it too for me. So I don't know. Like I think maybe I could pick something really old that is like meaningful, and then also something new. Like I like Paper Cuts is not new at all, but it's a song on this group of songs that I like really admire. Like I really admire that song because of how vulnerable it is. It's like this little thing that, like it stands on its own, but it's like it's fragile, and then you know, I'll just go ahead and say like the whole album of Morning View was like something that shouldn't have worked. Like a bunch of young kids, you know, renting a huge house and totally defying like the record label and all the people that we worked with, our manager, everybody at the time was like, that's a bad idea. Don't do that. But we did it anyway. And it was actually like the most, like one of the most important records to the people who love our music. It was our most successful record as far as like the sales part is concerned, but that record really connected with people. And I'm proud of that. So anyway, sorry, that's
well
a long-winded answer, but
Yeah.
Mikey, do you remember when we finished Morning View? We joked about so much during the process. We joked how the record label and our management at the time was like, "This is a bad idea." Fucking off for 4 months and going surfing and getting stoned, and they didn't think we were going to get anything done. And we turned in the record early.
it's a true story.
Yeah, we're like, take this.
We actually rented that place for 6 months, and we had 6 months to get the song to get the album done, and we did it in 4 months. And so it was like one of these things where again, ahead of schedule and below budget. I don't know about the below budget part actually.
Well, congratulations,
we did all
guys,
right.
on nearly 30 years together. Next year is going to be your 30th year together, I believe. Any special plans? Like, is there going to be a live stream concert we should know about, or anything you've been thinking about that far ahead in advance?
I mean, I think all of us are super excited about the idea of, playing Morning View because it's such a fun album to play. And
It'll be
also
20-year
an
anniversary of Morning View in 2021. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really an example of us kind of like, I think, finding our feet as a band, like really in a profound way. So, we'd love to be able to do all kinds of stuff, but we'll see what the world allows us to do.
That's awesome. Well, listen, it's an incredible record, Trust Fall Side B. Everyone go out, check out the record. Definitely check out all the live streaming stuff that you guys have going on. This is so fun. I mean, I feel like I should do this more often. I love the band-on-band interview. That way you don't have to hear my voice and it's only you guys. It's great. Anything else we should talk about? The charity, Brandon, you want to mention that just in closing if people want to donate money to it?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so we've had the Make Yourself Foundation, which is our band's nonprofit. We've had it since 2003. And most of our hardcore listeners out there are well aware of it, as so many of you have made incredible donations of both money and time to this nonprofit. And so what we do is we fundraise, and then we do grants to other nonprofits. So if anybody's interested, they can go to makeyourselffoundation.org.
Awesome. Well, this was such a pleasure, guys. So much fun. I really appreciate you guys coming on. Brandon, it's great to see you as always. I hope when this is all over, we'll get to hang out, because either I'm seeing you in passing like I did last time for like 30 seconds, or now it's over Zoom, which isn't really as personal. We're better friends than that. So we'll definitely, I'm excited for this to all be behind us. And I'm excited for this year for you guys, next year, and everything going on. Congratulations on the #1 record and such an awesome record. Mikey, Brandon, great to see you guys.
Likewise, man.
Scott.
Thanks for having us.
All right, guys. Be well, and I'll speak to you soon. And pick up Trust Fall Side B. All right, guys. See you soon.
Bye, Scott. Bye, Mike.
Bye, guys. Bye, Brandon.
You're listening to Lips LA with Scott Lips.